And then I don't. So I'm watching them on the screen. There's Izzy and Amy, but there's no audio.
Well, do you want to get on audio?
I've
You're on
been.
mute, fix it.
There was a little hiccup there. I would say our service is so bad that we can't get it. Now it says Betsy.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
Can you hear it now?
Like 7 minutes.
Todd, can you hear it now?
Yes.
Oh, did you miss everything I said, Todd? I'm sorry.
That's too bad. We're
That's okay.
talking about
We,
it.
we live in South Tunbridge.
No, I just have to get used to the owl.
Okay, sorry about that. We were just talking about having a regular, like a quarterly reporting structure to the select board that we would, get back to that, because that used to be the case and we haven't been really doing that formally. So that was what first item of business. So then the planning, the TQ report I wrote, I wanted to throw out there the brick and the scoping, and then I wanted to bring up the flood hazard bylaw stuff so that, and remember the last meeting we talked about like the idea of zoning, like this idea that people don't think we have zoning in town.
Yes, most definitely. We gotta
That's been on my
promote that to the select where they've got to remove that off of.
Well, on top, yes, that's one action item, but then also in general, I think we have to start. That's something I want to just start focusing on as we get into this floodplain stuff. So I put that in the TQ thing, just saying, in fact, our floodplain ordinance is our zoning. So we do have zoning. And just starting to get that out there. And then the last thing I put in, which I didn't discuss with you guys, but I wanted to say a thank you to Laura, which is really what I was thinking about writing the thing to begin with. So I just wrote that from all of us to thank her for. So on the brick grant, I think maybe a check-in with Marianne is in order, because she's been kind of in touch with Lisa Kolb about that.
Did she give any kind of deadline, some kind of projection on when that would become available to start? Because the whole thing has to be.
Well, it's moving slower than I thought it was supposed to be sort of end of summer, early fall. We just heard that we've been approved to the next level. There's like levels. So I don't know where we end, but we're at a level, the next one. And I think it's proceeding as it's supposed to. Lisa thought there would be some questions maybe coming back to us at this stage, some clarification questions. I don't know. I think I need to check in with Marianne and say, like, where are we? Like how when can we expect this? Because you mentioned Rodney, and he probably wants to have some idea when.
Well, it's unfortunate too that the Stratford Road is falling in, because that we specifically put that in the brick grant to kind of get that before it happened. That's unfortunate, but he's gathering. It sounds like he's gathering monies together, but this is a sizable hunk if we get approved.
So is he gathering, like, is he getting like transportation funding? Like, so it's not coming out of town emergency funding? I mean, 'cause I'm just wondering if there's a way to.
I think most of it's coming out. It's going to be huge, because
No,
he's
but-
thinking the whole side of it, not just that area, but the whole side.
Well, I'm just wondering if. Okay, this is.
And I don't know much about it. I'm not a road person, but you can see it's not good.
Not good.
Yeah, you can see that. I'm just wondering if when we do actually start getting money, if there's something that we can do to apply that toward. And because we did put this specifically in the grant, so it's not like a new thing.
Well, I asked Rodney if it depends how fast this unfolds. I almost wanted to ask you if it's worth, when you contact them about the brick,
Mhm.
could we possibly send them, I'll take a picture, send it to you. And include hey, by the way, one of the places we targeted, look what happened while we were discussing the brick.
I think send it to.
And send it
the
to
same
her.
thing To Lisa and.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good idea, because we did put pictures in to the grant and.
before.
Yeah, and so I feel like this is, and they awarded us, sort of quasi awarded us the grant. No, they awarded us, we're going through the approval process. I think
Yeah.
there's two separate things, so I just feel like,
So give me a chance to, I get a few things tomorrow, but in the morning I'll go
Just
take a
whenever.
picture and I'll send it to you.
and I'll share that with Mary Ann too, and we'll just like kind of.
Set them up to date,
I think
yeah.
that's a good idea.
And what I, because we're not really relaying to Rod what we're up to in a way, or it's very light. Right, I think it would be useful to go to the town meeting. Or the select board meeting is to include the whole road. And knowing that this kind of money could include the whole road, so that if you could do it in stages, I don't know. It depends how much is gonna become available, I know it's hundreds of thousands that they need. I'm not, it's a big deal.
Fix that spot or the whole road.
It's the whole side there is
Yeah.
in danger.
It's
And to
never just
rip,
that one.
I gather to
Right,
rip
it's
wrap that and whatever they have to do is a big deal.
Hmm.
And the river hits it.
Well, if you watch the flood discussion, he had that diagram of the house by the river. And then how it erodes and then it creates this underground
Okay, vortex.
standard, yeah, and then it just suddenly like another thing that is a little alarming, so.
Well, the old creamery will be,
It's probably happening right now, underneath that old, okay. So, yeah, let me put that on there and I'm gonna get Mary Ann, talk to her again. Okay. And then
before this week is out, I'll definitely get the picture here.
and then, the other grant, there's nothing going on, there's just a committee that was formed. 3 people, it was like Janet, Rita, and somebody else, and they're just, and maybe Mary Ann, and they're just working through the grant pieces, so it's formed a project committee and is now looking to, oh, that's right, they have to contract with the design and engineering firm, that's part of their, so they're like requesting information about that, so that's just grinding along slowly,
But I think if we
but that's not,
send these pictures out, we might. They seem to be interested in us as a small town.
Mhm.
They might be real interested to see, hey, things aren't moving so slow here.
well, definitely with the Stratford Road,
It's ironic,
but I'm
but
just thinking, like, is there any other?
Called it.
it's a good one.
Are there any
It's
other
a good one.
sinkholes in town we should? I mean,
Well, he said,
nothing else that's.
Rod said the Spring Road's got that real iffy place if we get a big rain. We get some big rains coming up, maybe.
I don't think that was included in there, because we would have had.
I thought we did. I thought we went right up the Spring Road to make sure we included that, because he kept mentioning it. He said there's one place here that's gonna cost us a bit.
I think we left it open enough that it could incorporate that, but it was so complicated to add like a specific location that wasn't tied into the town corridor. Lisa said we'd have to add like a secondary grant. I think we'll log back into that before the one see. I can check with Mary Ann and see what that means.
Because that's a steep embankment right there. That's a lot of work. Without moving the road up to Gordy's house.
Which is also
Gordy,
a lot of work.
howdy, neighbor,
I can't remember anything about this grant. I spent months like.
working on it.
Knowing all about it, and now I'm like. Out of sight, out of mind. Right, so did we include the Spring Road?
Oh, only so much bandwidth, right?
All right. Okay, so. Anything else in the other grant that we want to think about? Okay, I do have on here approving minutes from, because we didn't record, we had like a failed attempt at recording, so that was from 5:20, and I sent those around. I don't know if we can do that without, there are 3 of us. Just table that, I don't
Let's
know.
just table it until Rudy gets here. I know that we lowered our quorum. Because we were struggling getting things done
Mhm.
a few years ago.
Okay.
I just can't remember. Rudy might have a better memory than me.
Okay, I put on here Trails Committee update, which was really just like, I have to ask Jonathan, like, what's going on with the trail. I mean, I went to one of the last meetings, so he just gave me a little report, which I can say. He said, we're still waiting on the decision for the grant to improve the trail signage and parking in the town forest. Last meeting, they voted in Jonathan as the chair and Rudy as the secretary for another year. And their committee's brainstorming the framework for trails on both the town forest and private property. And he's preparing a one-page document for the July meeting to discuss and approve about how to approach this. Yeah.
Yeah, as you know, we're using the town forest as sort of a. Pretend like the forest committee is the landowner. To work on our landowner collaborative skills.
And I think Elise was voted on,
Mhm.
just kind of too bad because I was gonna see if she was interested in. But
I think someone has been in town a little longer.
yeah, well, so before Rudy comes, I want to do floodplain, but like I did want to talk about some idea of adding committee members. and have some thoughts. Well, not really, I didn't really have any thoughts.
I know
I think someone else would have a thought.
I know Liz mentioned that you had talked with her and she sounded like she was contemplating it.
Liz,
Am I wearing her down?
I think so. And
Okay, all right, good.
I talked to Doug Giles.
Okay. Wait,
He used to be a select board member. He sat here, well,
Is
no,
that-
maybe he was at the forest committee meeting. Doug used to be, he knows the town well.
grew up here.
No. Farmed here.
Mhm.
is he, so he's, anyone else in the sort of been in town for a little while, but younger set that, like I even like Liza Minneci always comes to my mind for every possible committee you could ever have.
Right, I think she's on every possible.
Yeah,
committee.
he's on a lot.
I was just thinking somebody,
Well, we worked really hard at getting younger people for a while. We almost need to have, I almost feel right now, we need to have somebody who's been in town for a while.
A little more perspective or a different perspective.
Yeah, because I feel like we gotta keep reinventing ourselves or balancing our demographics. Making sure that we have more people across the board that are, hear their voices in our
Well,
plan.
we're not talking about just one spot, like we can be up to,
Yeah, we can, actually, I thought of that.
So I
afterwards.
think we
We could
should-
try to get both of them would be a real asset for us. They'll just love talking about floodplain. Actually, Liz said that she loved working on stuff like that.
okay, so
Exactly.
do you, should we, I mean, I can speak to Liz, but do we want to invite, I don't know who Doug Giles is, we will invite him to a
Mhm.
meeting, do you want to do that,
Yeah.
Brenda, and like just say,
You invite Liz and I'll go after Doug. Go find out where he's living. He said he's shacking up.
He's with Betty, isn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
says you want to stand and throw it
That I
under
could
the
think
bus,
of.
yeah, and throw him at the clinic.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Well, now
Well,
we
we get-
time.
Get another person from your side of the hill. Chucky.
I don't think. Well, maybe actually, we have new neighbors, but they're pretty new. They haven't actually wintered here yet, so I think that might be too green. But they'd definitely be down.
Who are they?
They're the Aulettes. They live just up the road from me.
Okay.
Super nice. They turn out for a lot of, they went to town meeting. And they did come to historical society stuff.
Do you know their first names are?
Jen and Andreas.
I think I have met him.
Yeah,
You
it's
might
just
have.
their first name.
They're really nice people.
Well, I think someone who's committed to that.
Yeah, they haven't wintered here yet. So.
But I was just thinking like maybe,
Well, and Austin always told me he didn't talk to anybody till he'd been here for 2 winters.
why waste your time? They
Sure.
could be gone.
Yeah,
I mean, but
That's exactly what he told me.
the point.
It's funny.
Well, I'm not just looking for one. I really think we should add like the full complement of had 3, so I think it's find 3 people, and I think now is the time.
Is it 11 is a total? What was our max?
No, certainly wasn't here, but we have, that,
Yeah,
how many were on that one?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on that one.
Yeah,
I gotta find, I mean, I read it on the website.
Apparently Kevin Rose took this out 2009.
Well, let's say at least 2.
so let's work on that for now,
Yeah.
work on those 2. Ready?
You just want it?
No, I'm
Oh,
hoping he's here soon, we can talk about water.
Um. Okay. Let's see.
One of the things I really want to, just let you know, I think. We asked Rudy years ago, when we first started putting him in as our floodplain person. To get some sort of like job description done. We really should do that. I'm a big believer that there's a lot of us in town that. End up on these positions for many years. And we end up holding historic knowledge.
Mhm,
And it's very hard if something happens to one of us.
mhm.
It doesn't mean the town goes belly up, but it
No.
does struggle, losing someone. And having a general outline of what they're looking for is a good thing. A job description.
I could probably figure this out by reading, but how long have we had a floodplain coordinator? You
You know. I remember we put him in, so,
and has it always been Rudy?
yeah, we asked Rudy to do that. He
Okay.
seemed to be the most interested in,
he's the rip guy.
Yeah.
He's forgotten.
but he probably could
It's
use,
not hyperbole.
but I can say because he's so busy. He probably could use some help with that job description. If we could assist him with that, but I think it's important. But he's been in since the beginning. It's a good fit for him.
Mhm. Okay, well,
I like 8 years,
oh, that
7 years.
maybe we can help him. All right, well, I don't have much else except I had, as of like, old business was sort of just the town future vision, anything that we talked about a little bit, we could talk about that a little bit until Rudy gets here.
We were playing
Yeah.
around with
Yeah, you guys were
redoing
doing
the
it?
one
Yeah.
from 76
interesting.
to see,
See if it's changed.
see how much it's
I
changed.
feel like the planning commission did something like that in 2016, didn't they?
They did,
15. There was something that went out that kind of talked similar things.
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It was very farm. It was very farm orientated.
Right. I wonder if that will have changed even in the last.
Yeah,
few years.
we could try to dig that one up too.
You mean it was a document or it was a?
It was like a
It was a
survey.
survey, it was a survey.
I can't, they handed out town meeting or something. I don't remember. I remember seeing
I
it.
think we actually sent it out.
Yeah. Whatever happened to
Well,
that data.
We were sort of talking about having a meeting or a series of meetings or events.
Right, listening
We
sessions,
could see that with a survey of sorts, like.
Right,
To get a.
as a way to generate conversation by collecting that data.
I think it's helpful because I still feel like it, right now, when we have these meetings, I feel like we're missing. Some of the people in town, some of the demographics, when you look around the group that have been collecting here recently. It's just, a lot of those people aren't gonna speak up too if they see very vocal stuff going on. So if they get a mailer with,
Right,
we
give them a chance to.
give them a chance to fill it out.
Well, we did that for,
We don't have a budget though.
well, but that's okay. We did it for parish council like years ago when we were doing pasture search stuff. We're just getting information about the.
Here comes Rudy. He's coming in hot on his bike.
Lighting up.
Maybe his
we had a
lithium-ion battery ran out.
We had a tremendous response on, just people were very comfortable filling out a survey.
Right.
And I think if you come up with your questions carefully, you get a good.
Mhm.
Should be an interesting way to start. I mean, that
I would-
would generate data from us to then generate like
That's the way
things
to
from
do it.
listeners.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that idea. Then we reach out to those people.
Yeah, or even, but
The
that
trick
will
is
allow us,
putting together the questionnaire. and do it.
correct,
I mean, we could do, just to keep it inexpensive, we could do like something, a link online and also do something on paper that people wouldn't have to be mailed, it could be picked up at like. The town offices or the library or something like that, so.
well, really
Well,
got years.
I think mailing it out, maybe including it in with the TQ,
Oh.
so it's right in the same.
Yeah.
So
I
it,
feel like the town- what difference does that make?
yeah, I would mail it out. Not everybody uses that.
Right.
We want to get all those people
Okay.
sitting in the hills
I
here.
was trying to be.
Little buddy buddies like me that.
Right, but I mean, it can't be too much of a cost.
If it's
Just
included,
direct mail, I mean.
if we make it. You know, don't make it real heavy, we
Right.
put it in the TQ.
Right. That's a good idea.
Well, so that would
Inserted
be.
page, front and back.
October.
Hey, Rudy. How's it going?
Right. We were saving the best conversation.
I think, Rudy, we're all done with the
Yeah.
floodplain, just
Yeah.
so you know.
solved it.
You're fired.
We've solved all issues.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
You'll be impressed. It looks like all of us have actually viewed that.
Awesome, great. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We were just talking briefly about where we left off last meeting about town future visioning and like just ideas for that. And we were just sort of thinking maybe a paper survey, put it in the TQ, then generate ideas that we then launch a meeting from and have conversation about. I think, yeah.
So you were zeroing on when we would
Well, I
put
was
it out like
gonna say the- The
October.
next TQ is October, right? Yeah, so,
Yeah, the one just went in for July 1st,
right.
so we passed that deadline.
But that actually gives us like a nice chunk of time to come up with
Yeah.
questions. It doesn't have to be one question. It's like two or
Or
three.
maybe we can dig up that other survey from a few years ago.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Ingrid
From the
Van Steenberg,
2005.
the one that Ingrid, when
It
she
was
was
2000.
chair.
Well, there's one in like 2015, 2016, I think, too, wasn't it?
Rudy, there's a survey in here, 1976.
Probably don't want to use that one. Maybe we do.
Kind of
Maybe.
It
interesting.
is interesting.
The question.
Certainly.
Yeah, they're still so relevant. And it was just we were curious to see how much people's attitude had changed.
Yeah, over time.
But then Ingrid also during her chair, remember that one went out. We can find it. How long ago was that, Rudy?
That would, I think that would have been like. The last time we updated. The flood ordinance was 2014.
Is that when you got appointed? That's what my other question is.
2012, I think it was. I think it was when
I was short by a
Pardon?
few years.
Actually, it might have been a little earlier than that. No, it was earlier than that, because I was on for those 2005. Yeah,
I think it'd be interesting if we could find that old survey.
We should be able to
It's
find
a
it.
place to start.
I wonder if Ingrid has it. Or files somewhere.
yeah, I did. I have my laptop there. I can check real quick.
Oh.
Two rivers ought to be in a position, two rivers regional commission ought to be in a position to give you advice and how to do outreach. It's been a frustration in Stratford. We don't do a good job in planning, sampling the community, but I don't know if Two Rivers is state of the art advising. I think that you should.
You're on the board over there. You should be state of the art.
I know, well, I'm gonna bring this.
Good place to start. I don't,
I'll think, I'll inquire.
I should look at that site more than I do, but,
Which one? Two.
yeah.
Maybe what I can do is, maybe next time we get together, we'll hang on to this survey so we include some of these questions.
I think we should brainstorm one for our next meeting, at our next meeting, to come up with some survey questions and sort of just get something together for them.
And that gives Rudy, you could,
Yeah.
that way you don't have to find it
Yeah.
tonight. You don't have, we'll be talking about water in a minute, so
I just think I just want to keep that like ticking along, and if we can hit something for October, like a paper survey, get some responses back, we could have a winter
Right,
evening
listening session.
listening, just kind of keeps us chugging along, by then maybe we'll be rolling in brick money.
The engineers coming around.
Okay, well,
You on the survey, John?
Yeah, it's interesting.
so we were kind of holding the floodplain conversation. I was sort of thinking that's what we would delve into a little bit tonight. so,
Focus on
Yeah,
tonight,
so we
okay.
kind of blew through some just housekeeping and stuff. And I watched the video today and was alarmed by the house falling into the river cartoon.
Yeah,
Is that in Pittsford? Pittsfield?
yeah, I think that.
I think it
So
was.
there's been a few, there's one in Pittsburgh that happened, Pittsfield.
Field.
It also happened up on the Tyler branch in the northern part of the state. Yeah, there's a few different places, for better or worse. Honestly, I sent those graphics when the place got, by Casimir's across the
Oh, yeah.
river there, got brought in on the ferry and dropped on the banks. Hey, that side's higher than the floodplain on the other side, so it always floods on that other side, floods 110 at that point, so. But that bank is definitely being undercut over time, and I sent them several pictures of that and just said, this is what happens, and
The Stratford Road. We were talking about that.
Yeah, Brendan's gonna take some pictures of that, because that was included in the scope of the brick. And
yeah,
now-
they're already taking pictures of it, so Chris.
But we were gonna send it into the brick. To just show
Okay.
them that where we tag something, gee whiz, look what
So we
happened.
asked for money for that repair, so like. we need it, or
We
now.
need
like,
it sooner,
look what
we could
happened,
use some
so-
help sooner than later. That would extend out what Rod may be able to do.
Yeah,
on
the
that.
thing that gets tricky with that about is that the brick grant is planning.
Right,
Yeah.
the engineering.
Presentation. So, but it would certainly be worth getting that into the conversation, because it's probably gonna take funding from a few different ends.
To make it happen,
Make that happen in a
because
good way.
I heard Rod say something about the whole. Side of it really needs to be,
But I know they've got. You might be able to ask Rod about it, but I know Chris Bump, from V-Trans has already been getting photographs for it. They're already documenting it. Okay.
and I think I overheard something, they got a couple 100,000, he might have
He's
his
got
finger on.
130 right now, and thought that it was probably gonna require more than that.
Do you remember, did we include the Spring Road in the brick?
Yes,
Good. I couldn't remember if that was an add-on that we decided not to do. So,
So Rudy, summarize what we watched.
summarize what?
Where do we go from here?
So basically, the new maps will probably be out in draft form next winter. They'll ask us to start reviewing those and taking a closer look at them. And the recommendation is that we review our current flood hazard ordinance and think about whether that is going to require any revisions, because the revisions are supposed to happen by 2026. And that's not that far off.
So do they have
Whether we
some,
meet monthly.
when we were looking at it, are there some places in other states that are further along that may have flood hazard stuff that we could apply here, or not overreaching? Not driving people nuts with too much stuff. But is there anything we can look at that we can glean to get an
There's-
idea of what we should be talking, how our verbiage should be?
Yeah, so, that email from, Ned Swanberg, has links to several different ordinances, with recommended language
Yeah,
for
go
different
back and
sized
look at
towns and communities with or without zoning. So those, it's a template, you know, boilerplate language, but those would certainly be worth looking at to think about whether that would apply to. So when we did the last one in 2014, we basically adopted very similar to language that was in it in 1998, when we first drafted that ordinance. It references that hard copy SCS study as our official floodplain map. That's the part that I'm struggling with, because we need digital maps in this day and age. And this study will give us digital maps. What it won't give us
Is an
is the
overlay?
base flood elevations and the benchmarks that they took when they did an actual survey.
Rudy, is there any way that it can be overlaid digitally, applied that way, so you can utilize it when you need to, you know, drag one to the other?
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be so much an overlay, so what we won't get from the new maps is a floodway. And that is on the Soil Conservation Service, so that shows the really active channel that in our flood hazard ordinance, there's no development in. And there's a no rise policy. You can't do anything that's gonna change the elevation or the flow of the river in that zone. Outside of that zone, it becomes the special flood hazard area. That's basically the 100-year floodplain. And as it stands now, there are things you can do in the flood hazard, in that special flood hazard area, in our ordinances.
It would seem to me that one of the first things the townspeople would be interested is, when we have a handle on this, we let them know it's coming, and then how could it possibly affect them if we know? How could it affect people in town that might own land in that way?
There's 21 houses identified as being in the floodplain, which is based on E911 mapping. I think it's pretty accurate.
They count all is the fairgrounds one, or is the fairgrounds?
Yeah, it counts as one.
So not just buildings. I think it's buildings, lots of, you're saying like houses, people living in homes that are
I
in the
believe
floodplain.
so, yeah.
Okay.
And there's, according to the Flood Ready website, only one has insurance. And I'm guessing that's the fairgrounds. I don't know that for sure.
Well, and that brought up the other question. Sort of on the side a little bit, we participate in the National Flood Insurance
Mhm.
as a town. Do you know how much it costs us? If we're only supporting one person. If being a member of that national and paying that, do you know how much it costs the town of Tunbridge? I know, I've been here when the select boards had to approve as a line item.
Not
your
familiar
budget.
with the line items that go to
Because
that.
it came up and Gary, I think Gary was saying, what the heck is this all about? And it reminded me. You have to pay in to belong to that. That might be good,
Interesting. I will do some checking on that. I'm not familiar with
because
that.
if we only have one house participating, that might be just something for us to. You know, I certainly wouldn't want to harm that one individual, the insurance rates, FEMA would really like those properties to not be there for a lot of reasons, and one of them is this. But for them to pay insurance, if they're in a floodplain out of their own pocket, that's why I think you see a lot of that. Would go from, say, $800 a year to 8,000.
And there are significant rises going on right now in the rates. So they've been heavily subsidized in the past, and that's been the carrot for
Mhm.
participating. But those rates are going up quite a bit at this point, and I don't know what those rates look like for the one property in town. But I know
We should probably take a look at that, and so we know.
when I talked with Two Rivers, it used to be, people could get a policy for like $400 a year. And it had gone to like $4,000 a year. That was a few years ago. So I don't.
So if
should
these
do some more-
people went to sell their property in the floodplain, not knowing this. If the people who are purchasing it were not family members, need to go to the bank. This is where all of a sudden they're like, holy crap.
Yeah, and this is part of what's gotten more complicated is that, real estate agents are being requested to get that information for properties that are listing at this point. And people that are trying to get financing to buy may be required to have insurance. So they may not be able to get financing unless they are willing to get insurance. So that's where it gets tricky.
So to go back to my original input, I wonder if we can learn enough about this to get some sort of general knowledge out to the select board and then out to the people of Tunbridge with a few little caveats of what we know, how it affect them. Years ago, when they were doing this floodplain insurance thing change, we got Two Rivers over here, Kevin Geiger, and we actually personally contacted the planning commission to get everybody that was in the floodplain notified to come to a meeting. And they were told that your insurance is going to start going up like big time. And it was kind of a hard thing for people to hear. Because Kevin was talking about, well, you can change it by elevating your building off the ground on pylons like they do down south
Or fill the basement.
yeah. So it was very, very hard.
You said this before, that the mapping is not, well, what is the new mapping gonna provide? Because I'm gathering from what I heard you say today and before is that it's not quite at the precision, the old maps in terms of defining
The
where the flood
precision's a lot better.
better.
Yeah, the
Okay.
maps that we have were done in the 1980s. Or 1991.
So that's gonna be improved.
It is, it's based on LiDAR.
So now it'll be much easier on the ground to find out where the floodway is on your property and where the special hazard. There it is.
It will be much easier for the flood hazard area. It will not include a floodway, because the floodway definition requires them running models of a hydrologic study. And that was what got done with our 1991 study that will not be done with this study.
That's
And
where we're
what
talking about the
happened-
overlay.
So
What
the special-
happened when FEMA did the 1985 maps, they did a flood hazard area, but they didn't do any sort of hydrologic modeling to give a floodway or any of those benchmarks. And that happened with most of the towns in Orange County. And so a number of local towns went to the Soil Conservation Service as a federal agency that was qualified to provide those hydrologic studies and commissioned those studies. So that was why we adopted that study. But it's got hard copy maps at 1 to 5,000 scale. To try to transfer that to any modern technology where you can look at it, you can't even make out where the roads are. Some of the aerial.
If I So when we're all done with this process, apart from the fact that one's gonna be digitized and one's gonna be paper, you're gonna have an up-to-date flood hazard area mapping and then old floodway mapping.
Correct. Correct.
The nice thing about
If
the,
we choose, and this is probably part of what the process that we are gonna need to think about is whether we continue to use the floodway from that hydrologic study, and we would probably have to qualify that, saying this is based on a 1991 hydrologic study. Apparently, nobody's even got the modeling program that was used to do that anymore. They've gone on to different models.
it's gonna be a big deal for people who own land. And they're gonna be challenging us.
So yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah,
And it's a big deal for this town in terms of safety and in terms of emergency services and in terms of keeping people out of harm's way. Those are the,
those
I
are
mean,
the-
I totally hear what you're saying, and there's some part of me that looks at the whole thing, and it's like, we have one insured property. So what is the carrot for us?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I just think that the challenge for us as we write this is that we could have people who are buying land or wanting to do something with it and coming in and, you're using this old study. Do you even know it's correct? And this one's digitized. So how do we match those up so they're clear and concise and we can say with
And that's
certainty
gonna
and
be the advantage of these new maps is the LiDAR technology gives one foot contours.
yeah,
So
they were showing the corners of
And
it
the
were
river-
definitely
the
sharp.
river has moved significantly since that last study was done. So it's not accurate in some places.
Is it possible to do another one of those studies? Like, how does that?
The hydrologic study,
Yeah.
they're not cheap, and
Yeah,
it would have to be contracted to an engineering firm most likely that would do that. And when we had that one done, you had to have it done basically by a federal agency. I don't know, I doubt that's the same requirement anymore.
it sounds like it would behoove us to have a updated hydrologic study as well,
It would, but
but it's.
they only have, so FEMA is working with USGS as the qualified contractor to do that in limited areas. We weren't on that list.
Right,
They're doing it in Royalton, the main stem out to Stockbridge.
Oh, they are
to
doing
see
it
it.
there. Oh,
They are doing the hydrologic study there.
And why we want to put it because.
because that's the major branch.
I think because there's a lot more development there, there's a lot more issues there.
a lot more
We
flood
were
protection
lower
there.
priority in the bigger picture.
A lot less people.
We have one insured property. But at the same time, I'm getting calls here is like the real estate agent needs that flood zone. Because they've got to list it that way, and the buyer, if they're getting financing, is being asked to carry flood insurance.
Right.
So it's like, oh,
Well, see how.
so
that-
maybe there's only one policy now. But anybody that's wanting to buy riverfront property going forward may be required to have insurance. That's part of the shift that's going on right now.
You're required to have insurance to get a mortgage. I'm not sure you're required to keep your insurance.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, you'd have to keep it as long as you had your mortgage, right? As long as until you paid it off.
I think they say if you paid escrow, maybe you would. I mean, if you had to pay your insurance and your taxes with your mortgage payment every month, then you'd look for the flood insurance payment. But otherwise, I think people could just drop it. And I think they do.
No, I mean, this is something we need to. Just look, getting the USGS surveying? And if they're not providing it to us, is this something that's important in order for us to kind of move
Could
forward?
we contract?
Well, I was
with them?
thinking like, could we, look for grants, could we, is this like a, another Mary Ann special? Could
Well, and
we look at that, you know?
the reason why I back Amy saying that I worry about someday in the future when this comes out and it's a crisp line, if someone buy, and they're buying property here and they challenge us. They challenge you and then they
It's
challenge this
happened
committee.
a couple times already. They
And their
file
excuse
what's
would be
called
that we're
letter of map
overlapping.
amendment, and they say, this map says I'm in and I'm not. And because we had that study before, it was possible for them to get a $400 elevation certificate that showed the elevation of their building. We had the benchmarks and the base flood elevations, and it could get checked against that. So they basically had to provide the elevation certificate to FEMA, and FEMA gave the letters of map amendments to like 3 or 4 different properties in
But
town.
if someone's astute coming in, and they wanted to challenge us, if we were using something old where the riverbed may have changed a little bit and this nice new crisp one, it just, yeah, I agree with you. Should we be reaching out and making sure that two, if we have to use those two together,
Right.
we should know what we're talking about so it's accurate. And Rudy, is that number 2 tick today?
Yeah, I was out in a floodplain where they were playing.
Yeah, I'm up to 2.
Yeah, because it's like.
It's putting us in an
one
awkward
is useless
position.
without, well, completely useless, but to have this new technology with the LiDAR mapping, but without the others, like, and we're relying on this old, we need both. Kind of.
Yeah, I think to some extent there are some advantages to having both, but I get nervous, with having a 1991 study,
Yeah.
if somebody were to challenge that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
All right.
So what are they, excuse my primitive part of this, are they recommending that everybody just switch over to only using this new LiDAR digitized map and you just throw the other one out? Is that what they're,
Yeah, the digitized maps are far superior to what exists right now.
so we don't even use the elevation, the older work at all? Is what they're suggesting for towns like us that didn't have it.
Thank you. I think that's the recommendation.
And you're questioning whether that's a solid way to work for us?
I have no doubt that the digital maps are worth adopting. The part that I am not as comfortable with is discarding the floodway.
Is this a question that we can ask these people that are working on this, that put the video together?
Yeah, so either Kyle Katz at Two Rivers or Ned Swanberg, I think would be happy to answer questions like that. And I apologize that I wasn't more on top of getting Ned to come. I think he would be happy to come. He offered to come if we have.
Rudy, don't feel bad. I think we're in a better position to ask some of these questions now
Yeah,
than,
educate ourselves watching that.
Yeah.
the
Right.
Video and just kind of clicking through some of those links.
it'd be more timely to have them come in now
I
that
agree.
we've looked at some of this stuff, have our questions.
And, in some ways, that video was basically the same thing, or was designed to be similar to him coming.
Mhm.
Except it doesn't, and we could even ask these questions of him. And he could even come in on a Zoom meeting if that's easier for him.
It wouldn't surprise me if he would opt for that in this day and age.
Because if we've all
But
watched
somebody
the,
also here to place a comment.
well, we could take him up and do a little quick run around town.
So, I mean, in terms of like what we should be, we're focusing on just reviewing the current flood hazard ordinance for the moment and kind of.
Yeah, so I
It's not
think in particular, we need to take a look at the provisions that specify right now that that SCS map is our official floodplain map. We'll be able to review these new maps, but I'm guessing that we're probably gonna want to adopt the new maps as our official maps going forward.
But that wouldn't be until winter of 2024, right?
That those will come for review, yes.
So that would be sort of the next response action item. We'll get the maps, we'll review.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a planning
Yeah,
commission
but
thing or if that's a,
But I think part of what Ned and Kyle were recommending is that we start looking at our flood hazard ordinance and seeing if there's other places that are gonna need revision as well. Or identifying, that's the obvious one to me, is that we have that 91 map right now as our official map, and I think we're gonna wanna change that at a minimum. Right now, our provisions. You have to look at it carefully again, but we adopted a no rise policy. Which means that you can't place anything in the floodway that's gonna cause a rise in elevation in a flood situation. Some towns adopt like a 1 foot or 2 foot rise and allow structures in the floodplain to be placed above that. And there are provisions in our flood hazard area that allow elevating a building to 1 foot above the base flood elevation.
Is this one across from recreation field is? The building lot is up out of the floodplain, right?
Yes,
But the septic is. The septic system is designed in the floodplain.
yeah, and it's
That's weird, but I remember
drives me crazy.
Kevin
That-
Geiger said at one point, yeah, that happens.
Yeah, when I sent a map of that property, they were like,
what's going on?
oh. So the process on that was that the engineer submitted it to the planning commission for review, because we don't have the development review board. That's us. It had a stamp on it that said Agency of Natural Resources should probably review this. But he did not send it to them. He only sent it to the planning commission. I gave it less than 20 years before that bank gets, before that system gets exposed by that eroding bank. So,
Well, just think, Rudy, their creamery, where's its septic system?
Outhouse.
Right into the river.
Still sand, no matter where you're in there, somebody's pissing upstream.
Well, I think this is good that we're looking at it now, because one of the questions, maybe the people, when they come through, we can be asking them now. So if there's interest, they might surprise us and turn around, wow, you guys have got some interest, those are good questions, maybe we'll include you, you never know. We ask early enough as they plan to come here.
Is there anything that you need direct, like immediate help with right now?
I'm thinking that what may make the most sense is for me to go through and flag the areas that I think we should review. And maybe circulate that by email, and maybe we bring that back for discussion at a future meeting. Like I said, the obvious one is the official map should probably be revised. But there may be some other areas that would be worth looking at. I think the other thing that we would need to evaluate is whether we continue to try to have a floodway or not. Where we have language right now regarding a floodway, and if we decide not to, then we may want to take that language out.
FEMA let you do that?
What's that?
FEMA let you take a floodway out?
FEMA does not recognize that as their official map. The town contracted for that map with another agency, and under the specifications, we were allowed to do that, but that's a choice. FEMA still technically only recognizes their 1985 map, which does not have a floodway.
All they care about is a special flood hazard area, right?
All right, so maybe you can, if you can, you can circulate that for the next meeting, we can take another look and we'll just keep. I think you'll just have to keep kind of us updated and what the next steps are. So it sounds like we just have to kind of be doing our homework and background until we get those maps.
Do we want to
Yeah, I
hold
think
up?
that's gonna be
Yeah.
the next major
Yeah,
thing, but at the same time, I wanted to keep it on the radar
yeah,
that there probably will be parts of the flood hazard ordinance that will need to be updated.
Do we ask some of our questions at our next meeting, or do you want to wait a couple of meetings before we ask the questions?
you mean to Ned?
Yeah,
I think we should wait a little bit. Because
keep
I mean,
educating ourselves.
I'm gonna go back, I clicked through some of those links, but I just didn't see everything, and I think there's a lot of information there, spend 15 minutes here and there.
Yeah, I like
Get our
it because they
questions
have
a little-
pictures.
kind of
I like pictures.
Yeah, and then with you providing some focus points for us, I think that, I think we can hold off.
Rita, can you also mark in there where you think the rivers made the bigger change?
Yeah, the easiest way is to look at our parcel maps, because Jordan Tuttle, when he did the digital parcel maps, used the river where it existed at that time. It's really easy to see
Wow.
when you drop it over aerial photographs.
Yeah, I know down on the Howe Flats. There's been a lot of change, but I'm not familiar with the other places.
Did this get flagged? I was just saying, I wrote something to the planning commission for the TQ, and I flagged this whole floodplain thing as like the hot topic, where we were talking about. Did this? Did you do anything, or did Mariah put anything in for the select board, or? Did it get touched on anywhere else that you're aware of?
I attended a select board meeting and talked to them about this
they may have put
process
it
was
in.
gonna be coming on, or was gonna be happening, and made them aware that these maps were being updated and that we would be looking at the flood hazard ordinance, so pretty sure that was a video recorded select board meeting. I have to look back at the date of that.
Well, I was just thinking, we're
I
talking.
don't think it was in their GQ article though.
No, I don't think it was either, or I don't know about this one, but it was like three or four planning commissions or select board meetings ago that you
That's right.
came.
Yeah,
Well, just thinking about like town visioning and having meetings and seeing what people are interested in, we need to make people interested in this particular topic, but I just think it's interesting, for people involved in the historical society to see where the river was and where it now is and how things have changed. I mean, I don't know, I think that would be an interesting.
Well, it's also a way to grab
Topic.
people's attention about this topic by
Right.
showing that pictures.
So I'm even thinking like, at some point when we could invite Kyle and not Ned, but Kyle to actually come in person, maybe we could make that more of a open. These meetings are open to the public, but more of a talk, public talk or something.
Advertise it.
Yeah, because I think it just gets it in people's heads.
Especially people who own land along the river.
Yes, you
Well,
think those 21
How long is they're gonna
buildings should
seize
be
their
interested.
property? And then.
Yeah.
I mean,
seize their property,
floodplain buildings
they'll
would
start
be,
showing up
those
here.
people would be kind of like.
Oh, yeah. And then you won't show up.
Yeah, we're surprised the last time we sent out letters to people that had no clue they were in the flood hazard area.
Is it a mix of out of town and?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Does all now do all 21 of those properties now they're in? Would you-
They received postcards and, you know.
From us, yeah.
But that's been a while.
Yeah,
People forget.
Mowing and catering.
correct.
Like I worry a little bit, they reopened the buyout program
Mhm.
again, which I was surprised that they did. But I'm not really sure the word, maybe we should have done a little better job of getting the word out. There were only so many houses that are still. Yeah, that I could think. Wanted to be,
Yeah,
Gordy Barnaby's,
very, very, very close to a buyout on one of them and backed out at the very last minute.
yeah, and there was another one that was really considering it, but I don't think. They may not have realized what the window was, and I wasn't clear. I knew it was a surprise opening. A short period.
That one that backed out at the last minute has been sold again now, so.
The other part of it that was interesting is that they mentioned that the buyout also included. Potentials that were not necessarily in floodplain. I know people don't like to hear it, we brought it up. Would be like the creamery. Because if that slides down the river, it causes quite a bit of damage.
Mhm.
Could cause a lot of, Rudy could speak to it
And that's a
more.
whole different, so that's a different conversation.
But they were including it in the buyout, places like that.
Yep.
Which had never been included before.
And those are. What's, in the river corridor, which flags. High risk areas for erosion, which tends to be the biggest damage that we have around here rather than inundation. We do not currently have any provisions in our floodplain ordinance about a river corridor. If we were to adopt that, we would receive another 5% increment in our
Or ERA.
emergency response funding. Blanking on the acronym.
ERA.
ERAF, Emergency Relief Assistance Fund. So currently we qualify for 12.5% funding, or a 12.5% match, is the way it works.
I think it was a 7 point something, 7.5 maybe, if we did a river corridor.
Right.
But anyways, to go back to. And I don't know if it's still open, it was played, but trying to talk about the creamery without. Triggering historic people, but that building, I don't know how you would ever salvage it. There's no septic, where would you put it? Nowadays, to make it public, you have to have sprinkler systems in it, so you have to have water,
It's a river.
a lot of water. Unfrozen overhead. So, to revive it and do anything with it on a historic level would be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Couldn't you like relocate it to the fairgrounds next to the schoolhouse?
There you go.
Make it like an
I like,
exhibit.
I like the way you think.
Yeah.
Well, part of it's already slid
We're
into
not-
the
we don't have to
river,
worry
and then
about it.
part of it was added on over the years that has nothing to do with the original. The original creamery part of it, like the little shed
Mhm.
that got added in, it's actually in the right of way of the row of the state highway.
Who owns it?
It's brick, right?
The main building is brick, but there's some wooden structures, and there's a lot of big,
Moving
huge.
bricks, brick by
Not the same
brick,
as
yeah.
moving a wooden building.
They did it
It's
in
got some-
Down in Haven, they moved the train station.
It's got a very thick
They
Thick,
picked it up
thick
and moved it last
concrete.
summer.
floor.
No kidding.
Yeah, apparently it's just sitting in the field somewhere because nobody knows what to do with it.
Wow.
Yeah, because the Amtrak was widening the train and they said they're gonna demolish it and everybody got mad about it because it's old.
Well, what-
Building, they picked it up.
It can be
and moved
done.
It can be done.
Yeah, you could label all the bricks, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah,
5,
they picked it.
take
up.
them apart and move them.
Get
Down
some-
on the
get some
pit.
Lego
I can tell
biscuits
you, if
and
you've ever,
put all that together down.
if you've ever worked with the bricks that were produced here, now they fall apart on
They're
you.
crumbly.
I've tried to reuse, they don't hold up. But if people want to do it, they shouldn't stop. It shouldn't stop something. If they want to do it, go find your hundreds of thousands of dollars and go do it.
Just gonna
But
keep
do it
playing
soon.
Powerball.
What's that?
That's my
That's
plan, Powerball, and
absolute
I'll
strategy.
move it.
The guarantee.
Bob would
Yeah,
my
here.
mind if
Yeah,
we pulled
definitely.
that off.
I only
It's
play
either
this-
that or it's gonna end up, it's gonna cause a big problem. I think the fairgrounds is gonna bite it big time.
You think is all that's gonna take out some of the barns?
I
As it
think it's
goes
gonna
down there?
change. Rudy could tell you more, but that amount of, like I said, the concrete and that floor, I know from jackhammering it is very thick. If that all slides down there, it's gonna be a
Where'd
mess.
you jackhammer in the old firehouse days?
Yeah, we had to keep jackhammering. I mean, part of it kept falling in the river on us. So we kept jackhammering up. It's very rough in there. It's nothing to be thrilled about.
All right, well, is there anything else for tonight on the floodplain? Or we should do.
Yeah, I don't know if, there's anything else pressing right now. Thank you all for watching the video. I think that's a big step.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep it on the agenda for next time.
That would
I'll
be
s-
great.
I'll Just, it's gonna stay there
Yeah,
for a long time.
that would be great.
Oh, yeah,
And give me a bump to,
and then we'll just keep, I can just keep linking out we'll send the link out to the video again for those of us who couldn't be here tonight.
Well, we could point out to him that some of us, I actually found it interesting.
Me
It
too.
clarified a lot of stuff.
What, yeah, me
Same.
too,
Sometimes I feel like Rudy's speaking a different language.
me too.
And I mean that with all due respect.
Plus, I watched on 1.5 speed, so it went quickly.
Did you really?
I did. I can't, it was slow.
thank you for that trick. I'll
Yeah.
remember that.
That's funny.
It cut the viewing time down a lot, so.
Don't tell them that.
um, Okay, so I think that was about it. The last thing I do want to, if we have a quorum, it would be great to just see if we could approve the
The minutes.
16 minutes if everyone can just immediately recall those.
I'll make a motion.
Working.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I didn't even finish saying it.
Don't need to.
Good for you.
All right, I think we're done there. And I think because we didn't record, I think I need to send them to Jeff as approved and just have him post them. I think I'm gonna send them draft minutes, but I'll. Is that right?
I think you're allowed to send in the draft.
I think I did. Well, I'll send them up to.
Is that your Al how to?
Yeah, and Mariah said the recording will be mailed to the town clerk, who will send it to the webmaster and put on our website.
Okay, so public comment. Public on Zoom, public here.
Are we on Zoom?
Yeah, we have a couple
It's
people.
watching you.
Todd and. I don't know who else is
Fern was
there.
on there for a little bit, but she.
We just have Todd.
Yes, that's-
Okay,
Todd, do you have
any
any?
public comment?
I don't know if you can hear us, 'cause I noticed that usually when we speak, it goes yellow around the box where we are, and it's not.
So he's not on video anymore, so he can't. even-
No comment. Good meeting.
Okay, great, that's a comment. I'll take that one, yeah.
We flooded him right out.
Okay, all right, well, then we'll just adjourn at 7:45. Thank you. Good, and we're recording. Goodbye, owl. I hate how the owl looks at you.
So,
It does, it pivots and then it's.
I don't like it either.